And we are go. Any questions from the recess? Everything is A-okay? No problems? Easy as pie. All right then, let's continue. Finding conceptual clauses is maybe the first step that we need to do. And the first thing to notice is that it's conceptual clauses, it's not software clauses, as I have been repeatedly saying here. Don't think software. These are concepts from the requirements from some kind of reality, not a software solution. I myself find it easier to think of the domain as a physical product in some kind of a way. When we thought about the dice game, you could imagine it being a box that says dice game, and you can open the box and it contains the die and the rules and so on. So that's how I try to think about it. Think about it as a pen and paper system. What would people write, and how would they would archive things in file cabinets and stuff like that. That's how I at least like to think about it. I'll just scroll down the chat here so I can see the latest stuff. So, finding conceptual clauses then. Nouns. Scanning requirements for nouns is a good way to start. You will probably get a lot of nouns out from this. Some of them will be good conceptual clauses, some of them won't be good. In the book, he has a list of common conceptual clauses. You should, of course, use that list and think about the problem domain and, oh, do we have this kind of conceptual clause here, and have this kind of conceptual clause? Use that list. If you have something already from previous iterations, maybe, or you have bought a domain or got a hold of a domain, you should reuse. I think the most efficient technique here is to use some kind of brainstorming session. That is, you gather a small team that have already prepared by reading the requirements, reading any texts or books that are necessary to understand the requirements. And then you do a brainstorming session where everyone finds conceptual clauses without judgment. So you don't put one out there and you discuss, is this a conceptual clause that is needed in our domain or not? You just pour out ideas for conceptual clauses. And then you start worrying about stuff that is, oh, this is the same and this is that, and figuring out if it's a good conceptual clause or not. So at first it is easier and better to have a lot of conceptual clauses and remove than to spend a lot of time debating and discussing each and every one of them. So when you have done this, you probably then have a bunch of conceptual clauses, and you need to start sorting them out in some way. The first thing to do is maybe to remove any duplicates. And that is maybe easier to say than to actually do and find. Because requirements are probably not consistent. They don't use the same words for exactly the same thing always. Requirements written by different people, interviewing different end users, probably don't have the exact same vocabulary all the time. It can also be that in one part of the user community a thing is named something, and in another part the same thing is called something else. But it is actually the same thing. So try to find these duplicates and put them together. It can also be a good idea then to update the requirements to use the same vocabulary throughout, so that we speak about the same thing in all of our requirements, if that is what we mean. Next thing you could find is this a conceptual class or is it an attribute in a class? For example, we could imagine having some kind of item that you can buy. And we have also found the noun price in our domain. Is item a conceptual class? Probably yes. People buy items, they shop for items, they put items in their shopping basket. Is price a conceptual class? No. Could be. No. So if we could absolutely argue for this being the case. Price is just a number. But it could also be the case that price is actually a more advanced concept than just a number. Maybe price is not just a number. Maybe it's also a currency. Maybe it's also some kind of time information here. So we know that this price is valid from this date to this date. And maybe later in our domain, we find that we need to know the price of an item over time. What did this item cost 5 years ago? What was the price then? Yeah, when it's more ambiguous than this kind of like easy example, and I'm not saying that either of these solutions are correct. Of course, price can be an attribute. If it's just supposed to be a number in your system, then you can model it as an attribute. If it's a more advanced concept, then it's probably better to model it as a conceptual class. And what should you do if you don't know? What should you do if you don't know? Google it. Yeah, maybe. You should go to your domain experts and ask them. Because you have found something that is not clearly stated in the requirements. So if you assume something here, you either introduce some kind of mistake or error, modeling it as a simple number. But this is not what we need. We need history of the prices. So this will bite you in the ass when you deliver your software. And you need to go back and do a lot of expensive changes. Or, if you model it as something more complex and implement it as something more complex, you probably waste a lot of your resources, time and money on development. And your customer won't be happy because the system is more expensive. It has more useless features that is not needed. We don't need price history. So you need to ask your experts, your users. Yeah, ask the professionals in your domain. And you could, of course, give them guidance and advice. What would happen if we use it as a simple number? Well, we can't have price history then. Is that something that you need? So you can give them ideas, suggestions for improvement. This is something that is not easily simulated in education, of course, because you don't really face a lot of end users in very problematic domains. So that is something to take home with you, that don't assume things that you don't actually know. But in education, we often make these simplifications because we have very tight time constraints and we don't often have end users to ask. Assumptions is the mother of all fuck-ups. Some wise person said, I think. So, all right, we have remove duplicates and we have think about, I don't know why it's not scrolling very good. We have to think about, is it a class, is it an attribute? And find some solution for that. Something else that you can that can often happen is this scenario. We have student concept. We have a course concept. Oh, oops. Have a course. And we have a course. So we have this course, 1DV 407, Object-Oriented Analysis and Design with UML. We have a course plan for that course. We have a lot of materials and stuff, descriptions, and stuff like that. We also have the specific course occasion, this year's occasion of this course, 2014, autumn. And we have students that are enrolled in this course. And the student can, of course, enroll in lots of different courses. And the course can have a lot of different students. Course occasion can have a lot of different students registered on it. Yeah, occasion is this issuing of the course. Kurstillfälle på svenska. Swedish language is quite good at making up new words by just combining words. So this is something that I miss in domain modeling in English. So we could also imagine that the students would like to have a report over the courses that they have enlisted in, maybe with grades and stuff like that. So it's probably likely that we have something, a concept like this, a course report concept. Maybe we found it in the requirements as a noun, course report. The student can get a course report listing all the courses that he has or she has enrolled in during his time at the university. So, maybe we just put an association like that. You can get a course report over a student. One thing here is that this information needed for the course report is actually already present in the system. Because we know the course occasions a student is registered on, and for that course occasion we can get the course information, how many points, etc. the course is for. So this information already exists in our model. So it's just a report over information that is already present in our system or our model. If you think back a little bit to our first lecture, we had result in the dice game, which is kind of similar. It's just a report over the value of the die. And you should, of course, then be careful to add these types of report classes, because they add complexity to your model. You add more and more conceptual classes, and it could become harder and harder to understand your model. So what about the receipt? In our model we maybe have customers and we have items and they can buy items and we know what items a customer has bought, how the customer paid, when the customer paid. Is the receipt just a report over a particular event of buying stuff, a report over that? Or should it be modeled as a real conceptual class? Any ideas? Class, you think? Why?
You
have to bookmark the receipt because
it's something you buy and something you can show evidence.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It is a physical item that you actually get as a customer, and it has some kind of value in itself for the customer. You can use it later on for your taxes maybe, and stuff like that. So the receipt, while it is a report, I think it is motivated to include it as a conceptual clause because it's an important item for the customer in this case. Also, as stated here on the chat, in returns, if you need to return an item because it was broken, you probably need a receipt. So once again, it is very much up to you as domain modelers to decide and think and ask your end users. So how about the course report? In this case, I don't think the course report is a good conceptual clause because it does not add value. It's just a printout, maybe something you see on the screen. You can probably get as many course reports as you would like. Yeah, CSM could probably be interested in the course report. So it has probably some kind of value in itself. So when the course is over, the history isn't needed anymore. I think that the history you will get by having another course occasion. You get the 2015 course occasion. And then you can know what students enrolled in the course 2014. And you can of course get all the students that have attended the course by looking at, okay, this is the course, what course occasions do we have, what students have enrolled in these courses. So in this case, I don't think course report would be a big valuable asset. Could be another thing if there is some kind of limitation to the number of reports that you can get. I think it would be different if it is an exam. The degree that you get at the end of your studying period. Yeah, I think we will start a new page because it will be so funky. So maybe we have this also. We have a car. Oop. We have this situation, we have a car concept. The car concept we now have a registration number, it has a color, it has a description, and it has a price. But we also kind of know that these two attributes are the same for all models of the same car. So you have a price and a description that is actually similar for a lot of different car objects here. They of course have different registration numbers and they can have different colors, but they have the same description and they have the same price. then it's probably better to model that in that way. That is, break out the attributes that are the same into a conceptual class of itself. This is called a description class. And many times when we say item, we often actually mean item description. Because, for example, in an e-commerce system, it is not likely that you track the individual physical items. You don't know actually what apple you have sold in the store, but you can track that you have sold apples. In a car, it is somewhat different because it's a physical car that has a registration number that is unique to it and a color that is unique to it. So here maybe we need to divide the description of the car from the actual car. So that can be something to think about also. Is it color could also be in the description if all cars with the same catalog ID have the same color. I'm not really sure if I'm with you there. I think it's can be kind of dangerous also to mix in the concepts of IDs and database and keys and stuff like that into the domain models. You don't need to do that. You don't need to think about foreign keys or primary keys or stuff like this at all. You are free to explore the problem domain. That is the goal. Not develop the ultimate database from it. This, of course, then later on is an inspiration for the database model and for the design models that we use. But it is also important not to over-optimize these kind of models because they are for understanding, communication, and refining the requirements. And the few hours that you spend on domain modeling are well spent. This is not an activity that you do for weeks or days, but maybe you spend 2 to 3 hours developing these kind of models to understand the problem. And in my opinion, I think the actual modeling, the actual thinking about these kind of stuffs, writing down your models and understanding the problem, that's the important part, not the result actually. So doing the model is more important than having the diagram. Are you with me on that? Doing the modeling is more important than how the model actually looks afterwards. So, all right, we had 4 things to think about. Duplicates, where are we? Okay, we had duplicates. I missed one. We have reports, class, ES attribute, and description classes. So, all right, we now have a lot of classes. Maybe you have some relations between the classes also, but we will talk more about associations. So we know that it is a relation between two classes. And this relation should indicate a meaningful and interesting coupling between these two classes. And this interesting and meaningful is, of course, based on the requirements. In real life, most things are connected in some kind of way. Looking at your requirements, you can find the relations that are meaningful and interesting to your domain and to your system. Often we have stuff that we need to remember over time in some way. That is, we need to know that this concept was connected to this concept, and we need to remember that coupling. Then we probably have an association. We can use associations to increase the understanding of the domain and the problem. And you can scan for verbs in your requirements and other documents. And you can use a common association list that is present in the book to find this kind of associations. Also here, you can get a lot of associations. And giving a few clauses, diagrams tend to become kind of like spider webs. Everything is associated to everything else, and it's just one big mess. So that is probably something that you want to avoid, because too many associations kill readability and understandability of the model itself. So some guidelines about associations then. I will make a new page instead. So we have this teacher concept and we have a university concept. And as always, we should strive for good names, and clearly we can see here that we have a teacher that works at the university. And probably a teacher could work at many universities, could have employment at this university, 25%, and 50% some other university, and 100% some different kind of university. And suddenly I get 150% salary. It's great. And the university definitely has a lot of employed teachers that work at the university. This is maybe not that good of a model because we need to actually probably to remember something. It's quite understandable. You can probably all understand it. But it does not say that much. Probably we need to add some kind of contract concept here because we have different kind of salaries and stuff like that. So we extend our model. And we model it like this instead. This is maybe more of an accurate model in the sense that it actually shows that the teacher can have many contracts with different salaries. The university can have many contracts with different salaries, but the contract is always between one teacher and one university. I have a couple of questions here in the chat. I will just scroll up a bit. So the first question is, should you do the same brainstorming session like with the nouns and come up with all associations, even if they're not all good? Actually, I think that when you start thinking about the conceptual clauses and sorting them out after your brainstorming, I tend to find that the associations kind of just come from doing that kind of work. So I don't really think it's necessary to do a separate session, brainstorming session, and come up with all possible associations. When you start thinking about this, they kind of like immediately start to link into each other, and I don't think it's necessary to do a separate session. The next question is, do you denote that it is the left class that works at the right class? Actually, not really. The layout of the models can of course be troublesome, and I tend to lay them out as they are read. So if you can do that in a natural way, it is good. If you really want to stress that teacher works at the university, you can add a small, like this kind of like arrow stuff, like that. And that is actually, I think it's only needed if you have two concepts that you really don't understand, and you maybe have an association name that you really don't understand. So you need to know the order, and the order is not the way you usually read. Let's scroll down some more here. Yeah. By default, you read left to right and up to down. Yeah, the associations go both ways. There is actually no direction in the coupling, so to speak. So once again, try to forget about databases and software. If there is a connection, you can go either from university to teacher, from teacher to university. The information is, so to speak, there. How then this is implemented in a database? Oh, well, probably the teacher table has a foreign key with the university ID in it. But that's a design question. So we don't need to think about these problems in the domain model. Yeah, databases are burned in our brains. We cannot forget. Yeah, that is actually a problem, that you need to remove the database cap from your head when you think about this stuff. So, okay, the second model here then is maybe more correct, but it's not really that obvious. You cannot directly see that a teacher works at the university. Maybe you have 50 classes like this related to each other. You won't be able to see from that model that the teacher works at the university. Because you need to understand, okay, they have a contract, and what do they have a contract with? Oh, it's a university. Maybe this means that the teacher works at the university. So we have this problem then. And the solution is a bit like the report classes in the conceptual classes. We can include a class if we think that it increases understandability. And we can include an association if it increases understandability. So in this case, we could decide to, we add this. Because this is something that is really important. And people that are to use this model needs to see this very clearly. But it is derived from information that is already present in the model. So we can also show that by adding a small slash. And also looking at the names that you would probably have on these associations between teacher and contract and university and contract, they will be quite has or signs or something like that. So this association name is what it actually is, what it actually means. And actually, in this case, we have a third option also. That is probably the best one. So we once more have our works at association, really beautiful. But the idea is that we would like to add information to the actual association. For example, the salary, the duration of the employment, or something like that. So we can then add a relation, a class, a concept to the actual association. contract is a new conceptual class, but it is used as an association class. So it actually means this. We can like have this kind of like more advanced model, but we can express it more clearly like this. It is one way to write it. If you do this in your model, I would not say that much about it, especially if it's a small model. If it is very complex model with many associations and many conceptual classes, you should of course strive to make it as simple as possible, and this is one option to do that, to use association classes if you can. If this model is shown and there is no mentioning of contracts or stuff like that maybe in the requirements, I would not say that it is wrong per se, but as developers maybe you should think a little bit about it and ask your end users. Yeah, we have a small thing left here. I don't know about the time. Oh, we are running out of time. Composition and aggregation. As I showed you in the first notation slide we did, you can have these diamonds. And they're nothing about different, they are just special associations. And you can make errors if you use them. So what should you use? Ordinary associations. It's like in Swedish. If you cannot separate de och dem, use dom. It is always correct. So don't use composition and aggregation. But you will probably see it a lot because it was really cool to use it for a while. This is the composition. A hand is composed of 5 fingers, we could decide. Fingers cannot live without a hand. If you destroy the hand, the fingers are also destroyed. You can even use domma in Småland. And this is aggregation. So they are there to specify that whole and part relationship. Composition is really strong. Aggregation is not that strong. You can change the wheels on the car. You can remove the wheels and kill the car. As I said, you will probably see these in UML diagrams. If you Google UML diagram, you will probably see Yeah, the black diamond is composition and the white diamond is aggregation. Once upon a time, in languages that did not have collected memory and managed memory for you automatically, garbage collection, you needed to know who owned an object and who just shared an object. Because you needed to destroy the object, you needed to know what other object should destroy an object. Then this notation was a little bit more needed in designing software. Because if I go in and destroy an object that someone else shares, the program will crash. But in modern languages like Java, C#, PHP, you have automatic garbage collection. So you don't need to worry about that. And especially the aggregation, it is not recommended that you use because no one really knows what it means anymore. Black and white thing. Questions? All right, you now know the basics of domain modeling. We will have one more lecture before you face a domain modeling problem. We will talk a little bit more about generalization and specialization and some stuff like that, and also do a little bit of a more complex example next week. Yeah. How do you should more than one associations? Yeah, you can have multiple associations between the concepts if they denote different kinds of stuff.